Howdy, my name is Larry Pierce. I'm the County Extension Agent here in Washington County for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And I'm here today in Carmine on the western edge of Washington County with Mr. Doodle Johnston, the landowner. And we want to talk to you about some of the equipment that he uses for planting and preparing food plots for white-tailed deer.
This little device right here is called a shredder, bush hog, several names for it, and it's one of the most important tools that you have on a farm or a ranch, especially when you're working in lightly wooded areas and what have you. If you want to plant a food plot, you can use this and lower it as close as you can to the ground, and it will clip the grass, the little brush, that kind of stuff, get it out of the way to where you can come back and do your plowing and planting. If you have tall grass, you're not going to be able to run a harrow through there and cut it down. You're going to have to cut it first. And this little device right here, or a bat wing if you have one, it doesn't matter, cut it as low as you can. And then all that fodder is going to be out of the way mostly. So the other thing that it's useful for, of course, is mowing pastures and what have you, or cutting lanes through the woods where you can get that brush and stuff out of there, and your forbs can come back when the sunlight gets through the trees to help out with feeding your wildlife. There.
I'd say it's a common device that most of us have on the farm for mowing, so it's certainly an important device, and you know, as Doodle mentioned, we can use it for numerous things. As we talk about wildlife, I think using it to mow those trails and in preparation for food plots is certainly one of the common things that we can use this machine for.
This implement is called a subsoiler. If you have land that has not been plowed, disc, or whatever in a long time, this is an item that you need to use. This subsoiler will go down approximately 24 to 26 inches under the ground. Your topsoil has a hard pan under it, and that hard pan keeps the water from getting down. It also keeps the roots of your plants from having space to grow other than right in the topsoil. A lot of places with real hard packed pastures that have not been plowed for years and years and years, you need to use this item right here first. You go about 3 feet, go down, make one row, come back, go 3 feet over, and you do that, and then checkerboard it and come back 3 feet this way. That breaks that deep soil up. It loosens it up where it will let moisture pass through. It will hold moisture once it gets in there. Otherwise, if you get a good rain on your pasture or your plot and you haven't done this, the water's just going to run off. It's not going to sit there and help your plant grow. This item right here will help that. It will make that plot work a whole lot better. And it also helps to get the nutrient down in the root level.
Absolutely. As we think about different properties, especially in the central Texas area where we've had a history of corn and cotton production back early on, and then a lot of those pastures were converted over to Bermuda grass and KR bluestem, Bahia grass, things of that nature for livestock grazing and hay production. We've got a lot of compacted soil, so a device like this to help rejuvenate that soil and fluff it up a little bit in preparation for planting can certainly help us out. And like you said, one of the greatest benefits there is the water infiltration that we'll get to those plants in our food plot to help with nutrients and those water needs that those plants have. So in my mind, an important device to have. Also, another device that would be similar in kind would be an aerator of some sort. There's fixed shank aerators that would be similar in design to this piece of equipment, or rolling spike type aerator devices that you might have.
This device is called a bottom plow or a mold board. It's used to turn the soil upside down. These big front plows go in the ground. They go down anywhere from 8 to 12 inches. They catch the dirt and they roll it over upside down. The sod and everything goes on the bottom. The dirt comes to the top. It makes a really rough feel when you get through doing it, but it also gets rid of everything. It's easy to kill grass with this if you want to get rid of grasses in a certain place or not. They were used for many years in row crop farming to keep the grass out of the row crop, corn, cotton, soybeans, whatever. But this device right here, if you're going to use new ground and you don't have a subsoiler, and you can get a hold of one of these, this particular model has got 3 on it. You can get them with 1, 2, 3, on up to 12. But this right here will actually aerate that soil, get rid of the root on all the grass balls and what have you, and when you get through and you come back and you disc it all down, you don't have to worry about all those plants coming back up on you in the middle of your crop. They're really good for breaking old ground and making new ground out of it.
So we'd use this device first and then come back in with the disc harrow and
Right.
smooth up that ground that we use a moldboard on in preparation for planting our food plot.
That's correct. And one thing about this piece of equipment, you have to go slow. Because if you try to go fast, it'll jump up out of the ground and it won't do an effective job. But if you go slow, like I said, it will roll that dirt over. However wide that wing is, that's how wide it will turn over. It'll turn over anywhere from 8 to 12 to 14 inches of dirt, 6 to 8 inches deep. It'll roll it upside down. So there's nothing on top but the dirt. All the plant is on the bottom, and it will kill all those grasses that you want to get rid of. This is called a disc harrow or disc plow. A lot of people call them different things. This is a device that's used to cut the dirt up on the ground, break up the sod, and loosen the dirt up to where you can make your food plot. But one little thing about these items is this. These gangs on this thing are set in different directions. The more you want to cut, the deeper you want to cut, you set this thing down in the ground in the front more and not as level, and you get real sharp cutting with the angle these blades are on. If you don't want to cut deep or you're replowing something, you can set these gangs back. They have adjusters where you can set them back straighter, and it'll go across the ground and it'll break up clods and it won't really dig as deep. They're real good for working on anything you want to work on, especially cleaning up ground. They're especially useful in the wildlife business since everybody has feral hogs and you have to plow your pastures back out and drag them down. This is a particular model right here is a little 6-foot harrow that goes on smaller tractors. These things are made all the way up to 40 foot. But this particular one and one smaller than this can be used with any kind of small tractor or with some of the garden tractors and what have you, even some lawnmowers. They make them with little pull type discs that'll go behind a 4-wheeler or anything like that. But this item right here is the best at breaking ground that there is. It does an excellent job of cutting up and then leveling the ground back out for you.
One of the other things that's important about this device is it has multiple uses, especially when we're trying to manage a property for wildlife. One of the important things that we always used the device for was creating a perimeter around our property in the event that we had an escape fire, perhaps from the neighbor, or if we're preparing fire breaks for prescribed burning in an area. We can use this to disturb the soil and create that black line to prevent that fire from escaping the area that we're trying to conduct a prescribed burn on. The other thing is we can use this for shallow disking. 2 to 4 inches deep is all that's required during the fall and winter months. And when we use that device during the fall and winter, we can create a situation on our property where we are able to disturb that soil and get those warm season forbs later in the season at the end of the summer. Things like woolly croton and ragweed will be generated from that shallow disking.
This item that I use is a commercial rototiller. It can be set to cut at different depths. It works off the PTO on the back of your tractor. You have a leveler back here on it, plus your tractor PTO lift that you can raise and lower to get the depth that you want. This particular item chews the ground up. It's just like the little rototiller you use in your garden, except it's a lot bigger. It also has a lip on the back of it that can be set to either leave the soil real soft and stacked up, or to leave it flat when you go across it. It will be a real smooth place once you chew up everything with this thing. One particular thing with using these is the ground has to be pretty clean. You need to have your grasses and what have you cut as low as possible when you're using this item. It will chew it up, but it's a lot better when the grass is low. It'll be a lot smoother. And once you go over it with this item, you don't have to go over it anymore. You can come right back and plant because the seed bed is nice and soft and ready to go.
So Doodle, this particular rototiller device, we would be using it in an area we've selected to plant a food plot, and this would be one of the first devices perhaps that we're using to prepare the soil for planting. A similar item might be a disc. Perhaps there could be other implements that we could choose to prepare the soil, but this would be one of the really exceptional items in my mind that you could use, a kind of top of the line device, if you will, to prepare that food plot area. And this device would have multiple functions. Perhaps you like to plant a nice big vegetable garden. It could be something that you use for that as well. So these devices that we're talking about could have multiple purposes on the farm, and this would be one that would be great to prepare a food plot area.
It's also real good when you go back the second time to replant or replant your garden. It's excellent for that. You don't have to do as much disking, dragging, plowing, that kind of stuff. It will chew it right back up. It'll be a nice seed bed again. You don't have to go in there and spend a whole lot of time. And people who don't have a whole lot of time, this is a good device right here.
So Doodle, along those lines, what I'm hearing you say is maybe we could come back at the end of the growing season for one food plot where we've already got an area somewhat prepared. We've been through the growing season. We could come back into that area with this device and basically create a new area for our next planting, whether that be the next warm season, after a cool season food plot, or something like that.
Yes, and it also helps distribute the seed that are left in there, so next year you'll have some volunteer seed come back in that same plot when they are available to grow.
Sure. Saving money on seed costs is certainly an important consideration.
Yes. This farm device is called a box blade. It's used to level dirt, ground, driveways, different things. But for those of you who don't have some of the equipment that's needed, you can use this to rip the ground with. It has these rippers on it that can be set at different levels. And if you take the box blade behind your tractor, tilt the box blade back end up, and drop those all the way down, you can use this for a ripper to rip the ground and also help level out a plot. If you don't have anything else, and you can make seed contact with the ground with this device. That's a cheap way to plant something. It's not as good as other devices, but it will work if this is all you have to use. This is a chain harrow that can be bought from just about any tractor dealership or farm supply. It has fingers on one side of it, and you can see the bottom side, which will make it a little bit rougher. When it's dragging along, it will drag more soil and what have you with it. And you can turn it over on the other side to smooth stuff out, and it pretty much will pick up any loose grass, stems, limbs, that kind of stuff, and also help level the ground that you're trying to put your plot in with. This particular device is called a seed spreader, or whirlybird, many different names for it. What it is you can put seed, fertilizer, whatever you need to spread on the top of the ground. It's strictly for covering light crops or fertilizer. You pour your stuff in your tub here, it comes out the bottom, and this wheel right here turns and slings it out. It has a gauge on the front of it to tell you how many pounds per acre of whatever you're putting out, fertilizer, seed, whatever. You set that gauge, it hooks to the PTO of a tractor. Behind it, you drive along at a certain speed, and it will scatter those seed out like you want them in that particular amount. It's a real good device, it's easy to use, and they're not expensive.
Similar devices could be used on the back of a four-wheeler perhaps, that are 12 volts kind of devices that may hook to the battery of the four-wheeler. So you know, you can also get a similar whirly-bird or whirlwind kind of device that just works mechanically by you cranking an arm, and you carry that thing basically over your shoulder and walk around and spread seeds that way. So there's a lot of different designs, but this one is one that can be used on the back of the tractor. Now Doodle, when we're spreading a small seed, sometimes we can mix that with a coarse sand or perhaps dried molasses, something like that, to help distribute that seed a little more evenly.
Yeah, especially the native stuff you're trying to plant. If you're trying to plant some of these native stuff for Texas, that little bitty seed doesn't weigh anything, and you have to have something heavy enough to carry it down and make it come out and then scatter and put it out where you want it. So mixing it with sand is what I usually use. This particular item right here is called a Rototiller, and it's used after you get through putting your seed out or after you get through plowing and you want to level back out, but mainly for the seed. You roll this over the top of the ground, and any small seed such as a clover seed or such as that, real small turnips, this will pack it in the ground just far enough and not too deep to where it will kill the plant.
So with our food plots, we're interested in getting that seed to soil contact so that we make sure we get our seed to germinate and produce a quality food plot. Doodle, are there other types of rollers that we might run across?
Yes, there are. They can be made out of many different things. I have seen people take an old water tank off of a well and put axles on it, and they pull it, and then if you want to add extra weight, they pour water in that tank and fill it up. Because water weighs 8 pounds to the gallon. You got a 100-gallon tank, that's 800 pounds of extra weight you can have to pack with.
So then there would also be some commercial varieties of this particular machine with a big steel drum that can be weighted with water, but this particular machine is homemade, so it helps reduce the cost of, and it's very functional with the rubber tires.
This is a drag that I made out of railroad iron. You attach a chain to it. You can drag with this just to drag, or you can put it behind your disc harrow or whatever you're disking with, and it'll also help smooth the ground out a little bit when you get through with your disking, so you don't have to do as much dragging or breaking up the clods or the root balls.
So Doodle, when we're thinking about drags and rollers, weight seems to be an important component of those devices. Is that correct?
Yes, and according to which type of soil you're using, if you're in heavy clay soils, you need more weight. If you're in sand, you need a little less weight because it'll ball up on you and make a big hump in the middle of your seed plot. So you kind of have to gauge what you need for that particular plot or your land. And this right here, like I said, is a very heavy piece of metal. But it works really well when you're doing your first breaking and first cutting with your discs and what have you.
So smaller pieces of railroad iron could be utilized behind a four-wheeler perhaps.
Yes.
We could even take an old gate or a piece of chain link fence or a piece of a cattle panel and weight those objects and use those as drags too. We don't have to go out and seek something that's a commercial device necessarily to do some of the jobs when we're preparing and planting a food plot. We can use these homemade type devices to help reduce some of the cost associated with that equipment.
This item is a commercial Cultipacker, is what we call it. It also acts as a roller device. As you can see, it has little knots up on each one of these discs on this packer. You use this after you broadcast seed on something, and also if you have real crumbly ground that you need to break up some of those clods with, this will help that. But the major reason for this is to level and put the seed down in contact with the ground. And this device right here is very good at doing that. They've been used for hundreds of years, not just lately. It's a good device, and it's well worth having one of these to do your food plots with.
As we talked too about Cultipackers, one of the things to keep in mind is that sometimes this device is associated in combination with the planting device. So you may not always find this as a separate piece of equipment. It may be in combination with the planter.
This implement is called a no-till drill. And the reason for that is you don't have to go out and plow anything to plant with it. It has coulters in the front that cut the ground like a knife, and then it has an opener, which is this little device right here, which lets the seed fall out of a bin through these tubes to the ground, and then these are the packing wheels that cover up the seed once it goes by. A no-till drill is very efficient if you don't want to do any plowing, you don't want to tear up the ground, whatever. It'll do a good job. This one plants every 6 to 8 inches. It puts a seed out on each one of these discs. So you've got about 20 rows here of seed that you can put out. This drill is used mostly to put out your grass seeds. You can plant corn with it, but normally it's made for putting out grass seeds. It will put out any kind of seed. You can adjust the amount by how fast it goes, how deep it is set. It has a lot of different adjustments to it. It's a very expensive piece of equipment to buy. This one would be between $15,000 and $20,000 new.
So from a wildlife management standpoint, if we're overseeding a tame pasture perhaps as part of our wildlife management plan with ryegrass or oat or wheat, this device would be a device that we could use to plant right into that Bermuda grass pasture or Bahia grass pasture, KR bluestem field without having to do any other soil preparation.
Yeah. They make these machines in all different sizes. Now you can get them as little as 4 foot wide and all the way up to 40 foot wide. So you can get them different sizes. The little 4-footers, they usually run anywhere from $1,200 to $1,600 new. You can buy them used at farm sales and what have you, but they will plant 5 to 6 rows, where this one would plant 20, and it would be a lot more time, but they're still just as effective at not tearing up the ground that you're on. And you can keep your grass, but you can still plant other grasses with it or your forbs with it.
We can also use a device like this if we're planting native grasses such as the blue stems, yellow Indian grass, switchgrass. But on the device such as this, the no-till drill, we want to make sure that the seed box is a fluffy seed box for those type seeds. Doodle, we've talked a lot about different types of equipment today. I think it's important that as people go out in search of equipment that they make sure they match the size of that equipment to the horsepower of their tractor, and that's something they need to consult the equipment dealers on and just make sure they're making the right choice. There's different categories of hitches and different sizes of disc and shredders, and all this equipment we've talked about comes in varying forms, and if we don't match it up correctly with the size tractor we've got, we may get a device that we're not able to use correctly or at all. So make sure you visit with your equipment dealer and make that right choice. One important thing to remember as we're managing our property for wildlife or managing for livestock and wildlife, we don't have to have every piece of equipment that we've described to you today. We could work with our neighbors to borrow equipment. Perhaps you have a shredder and they have a disc, and you can work together to loan equipment to each other and create these food plots that we've talked about. So, you know, keep that in mind as you're going out and purchasing things that you know, some of these equipment pieces have multiple functions. Try to find those that serve you in multiple ways to help save money as you manage these food plots.
Yeah, we have an organization here in Washington County called Washington County Wildlife Society. I'm on the board of that, and the reason that we have this is to help wildlife, especially in Washington County and in Texas. And we have co-ops. Every place goes together to make a co-op. All the landowners join this organization. They agree to let their property join the next door neighbor's property because deer, hogs, whatever, don't know that that fence is not your property. So we co-op all of these people together to make a large county-wide area to help the wildlife. And any organization like that that you're able to get in contact with can get you in touch with somebody that can help you. If you can't afford to buy equipment or rent equipment, these kind of organizations will help you get that equipment and get your food plots in, or help you with how to set up a food plot even. So check with your local county or your local state to see if there is a wildlife type organization. If not, go to your ag agent or go to your parks and wildlife people, and they will get you in touch with somebody in your area that can help you out so that you don't have to spend a whole lot of money unless you just want to.